Welcome to Omnivore Presents SciDish, a podcast from the Institute of Food Technologists. In each episode, we take a deeper dive into a single topic shaping the future of food. Hosted by the editors of Food Technology magazine, together with IFT members and other subject matter experts, SciDish brings you the science, insights, and real-world perspectives that drive innovation, solve complex challenges, and connect disciplines across the global food system. In this special episode, recorded live at the IFT FIRST annual event and expo in Chicago, we focus on myth-busting misinformation. Food misinformation is eroding trust, distorting policy, and threatening public health. From persistent nutrition myths to viral messaging by influencers, combating science denial has become one of the most urgent challenges of our time. IFT's executive editor of food technology, Mary Ellen Kuhn, moderated a conversation with two leading voices in science communication, Charlie Arnot, CEO of the Center for Food Integrity, and Veronica Jaramillo, food scientist and co-founder of the Food Truth Project. Together, they explore why misinformation spreads, how it sticks, and what food professionals can do to respond effectively with empathy, facts, and impact.
This episode of Omnivore is brought to you by IFT membership. To the innovators, the connectors, the changemakers, the future leaders, IFT is your professional home, a global community shaping the future of food. Explore the benefits of membership at ift.org/join.
I'm so honored to be here today with our two podcast guests, each of whom is uniquely qualified to address this topic. So I would like to take a quick moment just to tell you a little bit more about each of them. As Bill mentioned, Charlie is the CEO of the nonprofit Center for Food Integrity and also Look East, a strategic communications firm. Charlie has spent decades working to build trust in the food system. He's a highly regarded communicator, thought leader, industry advisor on food and ag topics. And you may have heard or seen his quotes in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fortune, or on NPR. And Veronica comes to us from Canada, where she's working on her master's degree in food safety at McGill University. She's also working as a researcher and content developer for a really cool podcast that I just recently discovered called Unbiased Science. And somehow she managed to find time as an undergrad to co-found an organization called the Food Truth Project, and with the very goal of debunking misinformation about food science and food. So let's get started. Charlie, in our recent conversation, you said a couple of things that really resonated with me. And one is a phrase you used called the evolution of truth. So talk to us about that and how it relates to science denial and the work that the Center for Food Integrity does.
We'll do that. First of all, Mary Ellen, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And Veronica, it's great to share the stage with you. So truth is a social construct. We have to agree as a society about what we believe to be true. And that's evolved over time. Since Galileo launched the scientific revolution in the 1600s, we've relied on science in Western society as the arbiter of truth, and it's been facilitated by the communication technology that's been available to us. So historically, since that period of time, we've focused on mass communication, one to many. First with the Gutenberg printing press, then with radio, then with television, but they've always been mass communication vehicles with some level of either informal or formal social control. As a former broadcaster at a radio station, that station had to have a license, and that license had to be granted by the government and required you to behave in certain ways and adhere to certain standards. And as a broadcaster, I had to have a license and agree to abide by certain standards. So we used science as the arbiter of what was going to be true, and we used the communication technology to agree that science was going to be the foundation. And historically, media doesn't tell us what to think, but they tell us what to think about. So when we had three television networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, essentially in the 22 minutes they had to share with us every evening, they told us these topics, these issues are important to society at this point in time. And so collectively, we would focus on those topics, and we would rely on those specific authorities, frequently scientists, to tell us what was true. In 2004, Facebook was launched. And that fundamentally changed how we communicate. It's no longer one to many. It is many to many, many to one, and it gives us the opportunity to have an infinite number of microcultures that are empowered to decide what is true for them. So we've seen this distribution or dispersion of authority. We no longer rely on science as an authority. Culturally, we rely on those sources that align with our pre-existing beliefs. And so truth has evolved over time. There's a lot more to that, but it's evolved over time, and it's no longer, science is no longer the arbiter of what we're going to decide is and is not true in today's society. So we work on trying to empower stakeholders across the food system to be more effective in communicating and engaging in this new reality.
Well, that was a great summary, great way to get us started. So Veronica, you're coming at this from the perspective of a food scientist. So what was it that motivated you as a student to co-found an organization that was committed to helping people communicate more effectively about science and address what concerned them, what they should be concerned about, what they shouldn't be concerned about, what was true, what was not true?
Thank you, Mary Ellen, and thank you, of course, for having us today. And Charlie, of course, it's a pleasure to share the stage. So I'd like to start with something that we maybe already know, but we just got to reiterate a little bit more. Food is so much more than just food, and it's a very deeply emotional and personal subject to a lot of people. It represents different facets in everyone's lives. Food can represent us being social. It represents our culture. It represents us being able to facilitate our lives in the most healthy and meaningful and impactful ways possible. And because food is so emotional and personal, it becomes such an easy target for misinformation because, as we know, misinformation often propagates on being very emotionally engaging. It can make you really scared, fearful. You want to be able to feed your families the best food possible, right? So if misinformation is constantly being uplifted in our social media with all of these emotional drawings to it, emotional appeals will almost always overshadow the not so sexy, the very nuanced scientific information that us as scientists and me as a food scientist, we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to giving the facts, the maybe not so sexy part of it. But that's not what people respond to on social media, and that's become increasingly clear. So I've noticed this a lot throughout my life. I've grown up with the age of the internet. Social media was there in my entire adolescence, but I've noticed it a lot when I was doing my undergraduate at McGill. So there was a stark difference between what I was learning in my classes as a soon-to-be food scientist and what I was seeing on my social media. They were completely different. And I noticed in particular that misinformation had more grand effects on the women in my community. There was a lot of misinformation surrounding topics like fad diets. So there was an influencer saying, oh, try this fad diet with these separate foods and you'll lose 10 pounds in a week. Or it could have been an ingredient that is used in baby formula, and this influencer with no credential was going out and shaming new mothers into not feeding their children this baby formula. Or it could be this new supplement that's being offered by this influencer that promised to cure your PCOS and balance your hormones. There's anything that could be delivered online, and a lot of it is misinformative, and I saw a lot of it cater to women, unfortunately. And I really wanted to do something about it, and I also saw that in my community and with other young people, we're really susceptible to it. Obviously, young people are vulnerable. We don't have the critical thinking skills yet. So misinformation was really targeting us, and I really wanted to do something about it. So I started my nonprofit, the Food Truth Project, with my co-founder and fellow best friend and food scientist, Priscilla Leftakis, in 2023. And the Food Truth Project, we devote our time and our energy as food scientists to giving educational workshops across North America. We identify, debunk, and clarify misinformation online surrounding any controversial topic in food that you can think of. Seed oils, GMOs, organic, you name it, anything controversial, we've probably talked about it. And it's been an amazing experience, and this allowed me to get more food science communication roles. And honestly, being a science communicator was a career I only really knew about a year ago. I didn't think that was really a career, and I'm excited to be a part of this community now. So it allowed me to get other opportunities, and I was able to do more food science communication work with the Unbiased Science podcast and platform run by Dr. Jess Dyer with our amazing multifaceted team. And overall, I have the same goal in every food science and every communication job I have, and it's to enable people, especially young people, to develop those critical thinking skills, to be able to scroll on their phone better, because ultimately we know that this shapes our relationship with food. As a young person, as a young woman, I'm seeing all of this stuff on my feed, and it was changing the way I think about my food, my body, my life, and overall it really impacts our mental health. So I want to give people the critical thinking skills, the ability to understand where their information is coming from, what can we trust, and overall it's to better our relationship with food.
Well, obviously, perfect credentials for speaking here today. So each of you clearly has a personal mission to communicate science effectively. So I want to ask each of you, starting with Charlie, what is it about the current climate of science denial that worries you the most? And is it true that science doesn't have the power that it once did?
It's a great question, a very powerful question. And it is, in fact, true that science no longer is the definition of what we're going to be considered true. We have to be able to communicate, as Veronica said, in a way that resonates emotionally. We have a peer-reviewed and published model for what it takes to build trust, and it shows that being able to communicate and connect on values is 3 to 5 times more important than sharing data or science. And so if we're going to compete in this new environment where truth is truly subjective and people are able to decide within their own tribe or group what is true for them, we have to find ways to connect with them and resonate emotionally. We have a values-based communication training program that we've done in 15 countries across 5 continents. And we know that empowering scientists to connect using values enables them to really be much more impactful and powerful in these conversations. So it is a growing challenge. It's going to continue to be a challenge because this is our world today. We're going to continue to compete with large language models and AI and other sources of information. And so we have to be willing to adapt and not dig in our heels and say, well, science is what matters. We're going to only talk louder and harder and offer more facts. You can do that, but it's not strategic. If you want to be strategic and actually have an impact, you have to find a way to connect on values first to make sure your issues are emotionally resonant, and then share facts and data. You can embrace and validate someone's concerns without validating their misinformation, right? And oftentimes we're concerned that if we validate them and we talk about their concerns and we embrace them, from a values perspective, we're somehow validating their misinformation. That's not the case at all. You can validate someone's concern, you can connect them on values, and then that gives you permission to engage as a trusted, credible authority to provide information that they will then interpret as being relevant and valuable to them.
Well, that is so interesting, and I hope we can get into that a little more because it seems like it's very much related to the how-to and what we need to know.
We'll be back with more SciDish in a moment. But first, a quick message from our sponsor.
To the curious, to the bold, to the ones shaping the future of food, IFT is where you belong. As a member, you'll enjoy a global community united by purpose, driven by science, and ready to make a lasting impact on our food system. Connect with peers, thought leaders, and trusted experts. Stay on top of cutting-edge research and take your innovations and career further. You belong here. Become a member today at ift.org/join.
And now, back to SciDish.
Veronica, what worries you most about science denial?
The thing that scares me the most, and I think is painfully obvious, is the internet. The internet is what scares me the most, and more specifically, social media. I feel, it's not a secret. We get most of our information, if not all of our information, from either our phones or social media. And this is painfully true as a young person. I'm not watching the news. I don't have cable TV. I don't listen to the radio. Social media is where I get my information from. And I feel like before social media, or really before the rise of the internet, I don't think I was even old enough, but I have some thoughts. we were able to talk to people from all walks of life in our community, and it was very normal to speak to people that have different opinions than your own. You'd go to church, you'd go to work, you'd go to school, and it was normal to speak to people that didn't 100% believe what you believe in. I feel with the rise of social media, that has now shifted. We are in an echo chamber of what our pre-existing beliefs are and what we already believe is to be true. It's constantly getting fed to us, and the algorithm is working a little too good. It's a little too good for our own good, so it's gonna keep bringing you this information that you already believe in. You're already like, yes, this is good, so you're gonna keep engaging with it, and then you're teaching the algorithm to just keep bringing on this information that you're already believing in. It's very rare that you would find something in your feed that is contrary to your own beliefs. And when you do, most people would just brush it off, have a lot of skepticism, a lot of hostility, and they just brush it to the side. But it really worries me because we're losing the habit and we're losing the skill of grappling with ideas that challenge our beliefs. And that's really scaring me. We're in this echo chamber. So in the context of science, that could be very, very dangerous. As we know, it makes it much easier for misinformation to thrive, harder for evidence to change our minds, and overall it weakens our collective ability to make decisions that protect our food safety, our supply chain, our environment policy. And to answer the question, the other question, has science lost the power? I don't think science has lost the power it once has. It's still the best source of information. It's the best tool we have for understanding the world we live in, and it's the best tool we have for improving our lives. I went to this amazing panel yesterday on food safety and consumer trust. And the top three, and they did lots of surveys and they presented data. IFIC, the International Food Information Council, presented data. And the top three trusted groups of people that consumers look to for food and nutrition information was 1, registered dietitians. So shout out to our registered dietitian friends. Number 2 was our primary care physicians or our doctors. And number 3 was food scientists and other scientists. So that said a lot. I really thought the number 1 trusted individual would be social media influencers. And I was really surprised, and it gave me a lot of solace and it gave me a lot of comfort to know that we're still in the top 3. Like, we're still in the game. Does that mean that the people, us, are getting most of our information from registered dietitians, food scientists, and doctors? No. We're still getting it mostly from social media and unqualified professionals, but it still makes me proud that we're still in the top 3 of people who they trust us. So science's influence on society isn't as straightforward as it once was. Like Charlie said, facts alone don't drive decision making anymore. You need to connect with people. You need to connect with their values, what they believe in, what they hold the power in. And showing facts and being like, no, the data says this, that doesn't sway people. That doesn't move them anymore. And maybe it once did, but it doesn't anymore. So that's, again, one of the main reasons why I think communicating science clearly and empathetically and what resonates with other people and their values and their emotions is important now more than ever.
Well, let's build on that a little bit. For those of us who aren't trained professionals in communicating science, we'd like to pick your brain a little bit. So how can you go about correcting or challenging a narrative of misinformation in a way that's respectful but emphatic?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in the values-based communication training work we do, it's based on a very simple premise. Listen, ask, listen, ask, listen, ask, share. So you don't start by sharing. It's not about correcting misinformation. It's not about correcting individuals. If your approach is, you're wrong and here's why, you're going to immediately alienate the person with whom you are engaging. So you have to listen for a point of connection. And if you listen, ask, and then share, you will find a point of connection. You'll find something where you share a concern. If they raise a concern about food dyes or ultra-processed or kind of dig into that, and what you'll find is they're concerned about providing nutrition for their family. They're concerned about the safety of the food that they purchase and provide to the loved ones. We all share that same concern. That provides an opening for a values-based conversation to embrace and validate the concern that you also share their concern about safe food, about nutrition, about healthy ingredients. And as a XYZ, registered dietitian, food scientist, primary care physician. I've spent my career studying those issues, and I'd welcome the opportunity to have a dialogue about what I know and what's of interest to you, right? So it's not about correcting. It's not about telling someone they're wrong. It's about finding that point of connection and then engaging in a meaningful dialogue. That takes practice, because we've been conditioned and trained to communicate the science, to tell people, here's the data, to tell people, here is the information, here's what the research says. If you do that to begin with, you actually alienate the audience and you drive a larger wedge. If you connect with them first, they will give you permission to share the data and connect and make your expertise that much more valuable.
I love that you're talking about connecting, because we can probably all agree that there isn't enough of that happening right now.
For sure. And I'm going to double down on what Charlie said, because absolutely the number one is listen. You can't address concerns you don't understand. You have to understand why are they like this? Why do you have this opinion? Is it because of fear? Is it because of your culture? Is it because of a personal belief that your parents had maybe? Like, let's learn about it. And of course, asking questions 100%. I'd love to talk about, there's do's, which we said, but there's also don'ts. And Charlie made it very, very clear. The tactic that a lot of scientists have, and myself included, it's very intuitive for us to be like, oh my God, look, all this data, there's systematic reviews, there's meta-analyses, like, look at this clinical study, like, isn't this great? Because that's how scientists communicate with each other. And we're not taught as scientists to communicate with the general public. We're taught to communicate with each other. We're saying, look at this. And then that's a valuable means of communication between myself, other scientists, and scientists in general. But people don't respond to that. The average person is going to check out immediately. You say, look at this data. They're going to be like, okay, like, why should I care? Like, why does this doesn't impact me? Science is for scientists. And it feeds into the narrative that science and scientists are not accessible. We're not approachable people. People think that scientists are on this high horse and we're only able to speak to each other. And it just feeds into that narrative. And a thing that we can do to counteract that, instead of showing, like, look at this data, it could be a more powerful strategy to follow it up with a story, because storytelling will, for sure, even for me, I love hearing stories, regardless if you're a child, if you're 99, everyone loves stories. So a good example, and one I've had last week, was I do most of my science communication in person. So I give in-person workshops, and a lot of the times people come up to me afterwards and express their personal concerns about a food or anything. So one I've got recently was GMOs, so genetically modified produce. And they're like, I don't like it. I think it changes our DNA. Like, I want things that are natural. And of course, I listen, I ask questions, I get a better understanding of why they're so nervous about this. And then I follow up with a story, a real life example of GMOs. And the great, amazing one that I give all the time is golden rice. So golden rice is a GM variety of rice that has added beta carotene, added vitamin A to it. And it's estimated to have saved 40 to 100,000 lives in Asia of children that would have died from vitamin A deficiency. So that is a real tangible story that it probably connects with their values. I want my future children to be safe and eat nutritious food. I'm sure they want that too. So it's an example of something that we can give to them that is not just here are the facts, but the facts and the science led to this discovery that saved hundreds and thousands of lives. So that's a more impactful way that I believe that we can go about it. And just one more don't, and one that I've definitely had to learn the hard way, is not getting too emotionally invested in the conversation. I have a lot of feelings. I have a lot of opinions. I want to share all this. And I feel that sometimes, and this used to happen a lot more, less now, because I'm working on it, I'm still learning, but I felt like an attack against science was an attack against me. I'm like, you don't believe in the science? You don't believe in the work that I'm doing? I know the farmers, the food scientists, the regulatory people, the QA, QC, every person, like, I know the work that goes into our food. I know that before you take a bite of your food that you presume is safe, by the way, which is not a privilege that everyone is granted in this world, at least 1,000 people have had their hand in making sure that that food is available to you, accessible, affordable, nutritious. all of these things, and all I want to do is scream from the top of my lungs. I'm like, all I want to do is word vomit. I'm like, do you know about MRLs and the policy we have in place to make sure that food is safe? Like, all I want to do is say that. And I can get really defensive about it, and I can get really emotionally invested, and I get frustrated sometimes with the people that just don't understand. You don't understand the safety protocols that go behind our food. And all I want to do is word vomit, right? But you have to take a step back, maybe take a breath, and I'm not expecting everyone to have the same food science literacy as I do. Just like I don't expect everyone to be a car mechanic. That's why I go to them to fix my car. I don't expect everyone to be a doctor. Not everyone has the same level of science literacy, and it's our job, not just the communicators, but everyone in the food industry, to communicate better about what we do.
Thank you to this episode's sponsor, IFT Membership. To the scientists, students, collaborators, innovators, and leaders shaping the future of food, you belong here. IFT is your community for trusted knowledge, lifelong learning, and meaningful experiences and connections. Join us today at ift.org/join.
And that concludes this episode of Omnivore Presents SciDish. Thanks again to our guests for another amazing discussion. SciDish is produced by the Institute of Food Technologists and the editors of Food Technology magazine. To learn more about IFT and how we convene global food system professionals to advance the science of food, visit IFT.org. If you're not already a member, head to IFT.org/membership to find your place in the IFT community. For more insights, ideas, and innovation, check out our sister podcast, Omnivore, on the News and Publications page of IFT.org. Join us again next month for another timely discussion. This is Omnivore Presents SciDish.